Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. Very Revolutionary 20. AITA for never wanting to speak to father again after learning he slept with a minor. For background, my parents were never together. My mom was a troubled teen who didn't have the greatest parents and met my dad at a party when she was 15. My father was in 20. They conceived me a few weeks after meeting but never pursued a relationship. So, my relationship with my father has never been great. Growing up, I would spend summers with him and whatever girlfriend he was with. Even in relationships, my father was never faithful, and I was taught at an early age to lie for him. Around 10 years old, I realized that he was never going to change, never had any desire to step up as a father, and was never going to take accountability for his shortcomings. But in 2019, I received a Facebook message from a woman claiming that my father was a pedophile, and she had proof. So I looked at the messages and asked what she meant because that's a serious accusation. She called me on Facebook to explain. This is where it gets wild. She said she recently found out that my father had relations with her daughter about 15 years ago. Her daughter was 31, which makes us the same age. She explained that my father was her PE teacher, and like many young teens, she had an innocent crush on him. One day, my father offered her a ride home, and at some point, it escalated to her giving him. Following the incident, he ignored her, and she transferred classes. So, they never interacted again for the remaining 2 years she was at the same school. After she graduated, my father somehow met the mom, the woman who sent me the messages, at a mall. Through conversations, my father mentioned he worked at the school. She mentioned her daughter went there, and he said that he knew her because she was once in his class years earlier. My father, even though married but it was long distance, proceeded to have a relationship with the mom. They even went out of state to NY to visit the daughter, but she never met up with them for various excuses. Eventually, the mom discovered my father was still married and ended the relationship. At this point, the daughter still didn't mention to her mom the incident that happened years prior. Then in 2019, my father reached out to the daughter with some flirty message, and she felt disgusted and scared, like why he was even reaching out. She finally decided to tell her mom what happened. The mom was filled with anger and embarrassment that she was also in a relationship with this man, not knowing what he had done with her daughter, and disgusted by the level of sick. Rightfully so. Hence the mom reaching out to my father via Facebook, who admitted that it shouldn't have happened. But it was more so, he shouldn't have put himself in that position. But it wasn't entirely all his fault. So, because his lack of accountability, the mom wanted everyone, including his wife and kids, to know. I spoke to the daughter and cried. I told her how sorry I was that he took advantage of her, and that I know that may mean nothing, but I'm on her side because I had women in my life that were raped, and I don't wish that on anyone. She said sorry that it took so long to say something, but she lived in fear for many years because it felt like he was taunting her, especially by dating her mom and acting innocent, even trying to visit her while dating her mom. But the recent message gave her the courage to call him out. So after learning this, I called my stepmom to ask her what we should do. She also received the same messages, but my father deleted them when she asked about it before she can read it. She said she didn't want to get involved. So I called him and asked him. After trying to lie to me for 30 minutes, I told him I had the proof. He finally admitted, but basically said it wasn't his fault because she came on to him. I reminded him how sick he was because she is a child, the exact age as me. He knew exactly what he was doing, and clearly this is a pattern because my mom was also underage. I called him a and told him I never want to speak to him again. I also told him that as much as it sickens me, I also wasn't entirely shocked. Something in me knew this woman had no reason to lie this many years later, and that I'm sure that she isn't the only one. He is only admitting to what I know. And because of that, I want nothing to do with him. I didn't care if he needs a kidney or died, that I never want to hear from him again. I did make the choice to report him to the police within the state it happened, even though it had been many years. There are no time limitations of reporting because he worked for a school, but they couldn't do anything because the young lady it happened to do not choose to report/file. But I felt that it was my duty to at least not stay silent. After this, I also cut off all communication with my stepmom. I found it hard to look past it that she could still be married to this man who has cheated on her almost all their marriage, that she was raising a daughter and son but would tolerate this behavior. And let's not forget, also had a child outside their marriage. I also told my father's siblings, who I have a good relationship with. It was then when I discovered that my father also had slept with the daughter of a close family friend years prior, while he was also sleeping with her mom. Let me add, the woman was his high school sweetheart, who lived across the street. Her daughter was about 2 years younger than me. Growing up, the daughter would always make comments about my father being handsome, and we would tell her to stop because he was basically like an uncle. He changed her diapers for goodness sake. The daughter was also around 16 when she slept with my father. I didn't know until a few months after I found out from the other women, so that happened about 13 years before. One of my uncles stopped speaking to my father after this, so all of this happened 5 years ago. My father had been trying to contact me several times. He has written me emails, created new FB, Instagram, and LinkedIn accounts asking to talk. I don't respond and just block them. My younger sister recently had a baby and kept asking me to at least hear him out, but I refuse. I'm now getting annoyed why she would even ask me to know the truth about it. I'm sure my stepmom kept saying that it wasn't true and that I was believing lies, but I know my father better than they do. I'm his first daughter and seen the unmasked version of his indiscretions more than they even know. I think I have every right to never want a relationship with that man. It's something I have even discussed with a past therapist who tried to make me feel empathy for him because he likely had been abused by someone when he was younger. Maybe it's the stubbornness in me, but it still didn't justify, even if that did happen to him in my book. And in the back of my mind, I keep wondering if he also tried anything on my younger sister. Even though I have asked several times, she denies it. But the loyalty she still has to him, even though she tried to commit suicide when she was about 15/16, has me questioning. The thought of even giving him the chance to speak makes my stomach in knots, because I know much. He will manipulate the truth to make himself seem like the victim. Yet people keep telling me that I don't make peace. I will regret it if something happens. So maybe the world of Reddit has another perspective, or validates that I'm right in my stance, and to continue to block him regardless of his attempts. AITA? OP is not at fault for cutting off ties with their father. Rather, the father is the one in the wrong. It is abhorrent to be related to such a despicable person. OP's actions are completely justified, so I would rate them 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. The father, on the other hand, is a big AH, so I would rate him 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP's stepmother, who chose not to intervene, is also an AH because her neutrality enables her husband's behavior. Therefore, I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Slum Bearing 3. AITA, for being angry that my roommate was sleeping under my bed for months without telling me. I, 24M, have lived with my roommate Carl, 24M, for 2 years. A few months into rooming with him, he told me he was I said, okay, cool. I am not interested in that personal information, nor am I judgmental. I said, all right. A few times over the last year, he has asked me if I had ever considered experimenting with other men. I said, nope. Also, I said I didn't feel comfortable with him asking me such a personal question. It's not like we are close friends, we are only roommates by happenstance, basically. Anyway, every time I said this, he basically said, we'll see. I was like, what? Anyways, last night I had a horrifying experience. I heard a noise under my bed. It was movement. At first I thought I was imagining things, but then I heard it again. I thought, oh god, is it a mouse or a rat or some My god, this was like 3 a.m. So I got out of bed and looked under with my phone flashlight. Now this here was the most startling moment of my life. I guess I am lucky because I have never before this moment felt true terror and fear as a physical sensation. But I was completely jolted. There under my bed was my roommate staring wide-eyed at me. And he screeched when I looked under the bed. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I then just started hearing, sorry, 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 sorry. My roommate crawled out from under the bed, crying, apologizing over and over. I was so creeped out and afraid that I ran out of the apartment in my pajamas. There was a Dunkin' Donut that was open 24/7 a few blocks away. So I just sat in there with a decaf and a breakfast sandwich, with my heart thundering away. My roommate kept texting me asking to talk. I ignored it. In the text, he found a way to horrify me even further. He confessed he had been sleeping under my bed a few nights a week for 3 or 4 months, and that he was doing it to get closer to me and psychically saturate each other. I waited for him to go to work, and I ran into the apartment, got my essentials, and left. I am currently crashing with a buddy. Our lease is up in 1 month. My intention is simply to not renew. This dude is blowing up my phone, and I am getting texts from other people, some friends of mine, and some bozos who are friends with him. He is going around telling people I shamed him and that I am rejecting his apologies. Some people are claiming I am overreacting and invalidating his feelings. Most people agree he was improper, but think I should work it out with him and give a second chance because he's sensitive. I feel like I am losing my mind, and I am seriously 20% convinced I am experiencing a long lucid dream of some sort and wondering if I am going to wake up or I am in a coma or something, because this is so insane to me. Like, not really, but maybe really. I mean, what the So AITA, or is everyone around me a nut? OP is not an AH for standing up to protect her boundaries. His roommate's actions are extremely mean and completely unjustifiable. OP's decision to leave and not forgive his roommate is 100% justified. There is nothing like give him a chance. The suggestions are completely childish. As for scores, I would rate OP's roommate 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now jump onto the next story from temporary_lie_3460. AITA. For walking out on a blind date my friend set up 2 weeks after my husband died. I just really need some clarity on this situation. I, 23F, lost my husband, 25M, weeks ago to a car accident. He was the love of my life, and I'm still not used to waking up without him every day. We had big plans for our future, and it all came crashing down in a heartbeat. We met on his uncle's farm. He was a farmhand, and it was love at first sight for me. I'm also 4 months pregnant, but I haven't told anyone. I was planning on telling my friend when I was feeling better. My best friend, Lee, 24F, has been my shoulder to cry on during this time. She helped me with his funeral and anything else I needed as I'm NC with my bio family, story for another time. She is currently dating Barry, 24M, and they usually hang out in a trio with Liam, 24M. When I first met Liam, he hit on me hard, tried everything, like comparing himself with my husband and saying weird things like our kids would be cuter than if you had kids with my husband. He's also made weird comments like, I need a city boy, and would motion himself when I'm a country girl through and through. I typically would shut him down or ignore him, but I would always get dirty looks from Barry. Skip to Sunday night. I got a message from Lee begging me to come to dinner with her because she wanted to treat me as I had been through a lot in the last couple of weeks. Feeling not so bad about myself, I decided to go. When I arrived, she wasn't there, so I texted her asking how long she would be, and she told me 5 minutes. She's just running late and is around the corner. So I sat down and ordered a drink. Now 5 minutes comes and she's still not there, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt and waited another 5. When I'm about to call her, Liam comes rushing over and gives his apologies for being late. I asked him what he's doing here because I'm waiting for Lee, and it was a 2-chair table. He smiles at me and grabs my hand. I ripped it off of him and he just says, "Oh, I asked Lee to set us up. Now that my husband's name isn't a problem, we can finally get to know each other." He looked so cringy, and I'm telling you, I was floored. I stood up and told him that I wasn't interested, and I certainly don't give a flying f*** about getting to know him, and that I just lost my husband. Without a word of a lie, this man stands up and said, "I know you're being overly emotional right now, so I'll forgive you for that. Sit down with me. I'm not saying we must have sex straight away or anything." I was disgusted. I shoved past him and went home as fast as I could. When I did get home, Lee messaged me, "So, how was dinner?" with a smirk emoji. I called her, and when she answered, I didn't let her get a word in. I yelled at her, asked her how she has the audacity to do something like this week after I just lost my husband, when she's been the one to hold me together this whole time. I asked her what f***ing game she was playing, and that the only reason I wanted to meet tonight was to tell her I'm pregnant. I just hung up on her and texted her that I need time and don't want to be contacted by her for the time being. Last night, Barry came to my house and asked to talk. I said no, and that if he didn't leave, I'd call the police. He told me that I broke Lee's heart and that I deeply hurt Liam, when now is an even better time to get to know Liam because he could raise my child with me. I opened my door, which Barry took as I wanted to talk. Instead, I hit him with my shoes and chased him to his car screaming. I'm actually embarrassed I did that. All day today, I'm being flooded with messages from friends and the trio themselves shaming me for pushing the people who care about me the most away, and that they don't even recognize the person I have become. The only thing that hurts me the most is that my husband would know what to do. He would tell me how to fix it. And now I have no one who I can talk to. I'm just so numb inside. I have a therapy appointment tomorrow, but I'm thinking of calling my husband's mom, even though we've barely spoken since the funeral. Any advice is appreciated. Please excuse any typos. I'm just so exhausted. Am I the AH? OP is not an AH for rebuffing the inappropriate man like Liam, who dismissed her grief and called her late husband's death an opportunity for entering a relationship with her. Liam is a big AH, and I would give him 4 out of 5 scores on the AH scale. OP's so-called friend Lee is also an AH for dragging OP into a date with such a weird person, so I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. OP has every right to set her boundaries and prioritize her safety and welfare over such friends. As OP is not an AH, I would give 0 out of 5 scores on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Railship Chronicles. I am suspicious of my wife and my friend's behavior. I want to check her phone. AITA? My wife, 30F, and I, 32M, just returned from a long weekend camping trip with 2 other couples, friends we've known for years. We had a great time, but something happened the morning we left that I can't shake. We were all packing up, getting ready to head back home. I was loading our car when I looked up and saw my wife and my friend at the campsite, several feet away. She was bent over to pick something up, and in that split second, I saw him reach out and squeeze her hip, sliding his hand down to her ass. My wife quickly pushed his hand away, but she didn't look upset. She was smiling at him, almost playfully. It all happened so fast, maybe a second or two, but it felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I glanced around, but no one else seemed to have seen it. His wife was busy packing up their car, and the other couple was further away, chatting about the ride back. The drive home was quiet. My wife tried making conversation, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying that scene over and over. When she asked why I was so quiet, I lied and said I was just thinking about work. The truth is, I was in shock. I didn't want to bring it up. If I mentioned it, she might tell me I was imagining things, that I was being ridiculous. The rest of the day, I felt like I was just moving on autopilot. I barely slept last night and can hardly focus on work today. My mind keeps racing, questioning every detail. Aside from what I saw, the rest of the trip was great, and nothing seemed out of place. A part of me is wondering if I read the whole situation wrong, but the look on her face, that smile, it was too friendly, too casual for something that crossed a line like that. I love my wife to death. We've been together since freshman year of college, and I've never had reason to doubt her. She's my best friend. But now, for the first time, there's this knot in my gut that I can't untangle. I've never been the type to snoop. I've always trusted her completely. But right now, I'm sitting here, wondering if I should check her phone. It's password protected, so even if I wanted to, I don't know how I'd do it without her finding out. This is eating me up, and I know I need to do something about it. Update. Found her iPad. It didn't have a password, so I got in, and it is still connected to her phone. She has Telegram on it. They've been chatting on there. I am still going through the messages, but she is cheating. I am not falling apart yet. I'm trying to keep it together to make the correct next move without messing this up. What do I do? Do I confront her when she gets home? Do I go to his house and confront him? Please help. Update 2. Thank you all for your advice. I didn't tell her anything. I have locked myself up in my home office under the pretense of needing to catch up on work. She is not suspicious. I kept the iPad with me. She hasn't used it in so long, she won't even know it's missing. I took pictures of all their messages using my phone as a safety measure as well. They have been chatting for at least 8 months as far as I can tell. Telegram is their main communication channel, it seems. They've sent each other messages and making plans on making their relationship official after leaving me and his wife. I can't believe she would do this to me. From the messages, I saw she had sent him a suggestive photo of herself on her way to the gym earlier this evening, and when she got back home, she started kissing me, wanting sex. I declined, saying I needed to get work done. I am confused right now and unable to think clearly, so I will follow the advice I am offered here. Lawyer, gather evidence. I will work on those. I also saw several comments advising me to separate my finances from hers. We co-own the apartment we live in and have joint bank accounts. My parents died in a car crash 2 years ago and left me a large inheritance, which she knows about. She does not have access to the money in that fund. Is there anything I need to do to protect myself there if it comes to that point? We don't have kids yet. Update 3. I work from home sometimes and didn't have any meetings this morning, so I spent it researching and calling lawyers. I have 2 consultations lined up for tomorrow, but the majority couldn't book me in until next week. I will tell his wife and show her proof as soon as I settle on a lawyer and get myself covered first. Once she's been informed, I will give her time to get her affairs in order and secure a lawyer if that's what she wants to do before I decide what to do next, such as confronting my wife. I don't understand how I'm feeling. I am not angry for some reason. Number maybe, sick, and nauseous when I think of the messages I've read, especially the sex messages. I just feel like I am just doing the things that I need to be doing right now. But it's almost like I am living somebody else's life. I don't know how long I can keep up the poker face without her noticing something is up. Thanks for your messages and support. Update 4. Guys, I am humbled by all the messages and advice I received. Not much has happened since yesterday, just keeping myself busy with work and the gym. The anniversary of my parents' passing is coming up in about a month, and she obviously knows this. So when she asked why I seemed off, I just told her I was thinking about them. I have consultations with several lawyers lined up, most next week, a few this afternoon. I will update after I settle on a lawyer and know what my options are. Update 5. I found a hell of a lawyer who managed to draft my divorce papers within days, which were filed this morning. I am in a no-fault jurisdiction, which meant all the evidence of the infidelity which I had gathered can't be used in court. The good news is that my inheritance is safe because I didn't use the money for marital expenses. Our condo was a wedding gift bought by both our parents. Each side contributed 50% to the down payment. So one of us will have to buy the other out, or we both sell it. I called the OBS on Saturday and asked to meet her for coffee. I chose that day because, ironically, her husband and my wife had gone on an overnight trip together. I found out from their messages on the iPad the lies they were going with, where my wife was staying at her sister's for the weekend to help with the kids, while her sister's husband was away on a business trip, and her husband was going away for a work-related project. The truth was, my wife and my husband were taking a trip out of town together and were staying at a hotel, all paid for by the Casanova himself. I showed her their messages on the Telegram app. Pictures included all of it. She told me she noticed him feeling distant and withdrawn a few months ago. She thought it was just work stress and had no reason to suspect he was cheating. Finding out that her husband was, in fact, cheating, and with my wife, who is also her friend, came as a blow to her. We chatted some more, and I gave her my lawyer's number as she considers her options. Sunday night, my wife returned from her sister's house. She walked through the door and greeted me with kisses, saying she missed me after she had spent the weekend with her lover. Her ability to compartmentalize is almost diabolical. I sat her down and told her we needed to talk. I had the whole conversation recorded without her knowledge. Following lawyer's advice, I live in a one-party consent state. Here's how it went. I asked her to promise to be honest with me. Of course, baby, but she was nervous. Then I asked her a series of questions. Do you love me? Yes. Are you happy with me? Yes, of course, baby. Have I been a good husband to you? Do I treat you right? Yes and yes. WTH is going on? Please humor me. Okay. Have I ever done anything to hurt you, whether physically or emotionally? No, of course not. WTF. Okay. So, if you're happy with me, then why are you cheating on me? She stared at me in shock for a good minute and then immediately started denying it. This went on for a little while, and then I just told her to drop the act because I found out the truth. Eventually, she broke down and admitted to kissing a guy who had been hitting on her at a bar during a night out with her girlfriend a few months ago. I don't know why, but at this point, I started laughing because the whole thing was just absurd. She not only cheated on me, but she had also taken every opportunity she could find to cheat on me. I asked her if that was the only time she cheated. She swore up and down that it was the only time and that it was a moment of weakness, that she was drunk, and it had meant nothing. I said nothing. I gave her my lawyer's business card and said I filed for divorce. I hadn't yet. I wanted to talk to her just once first to see if there was anything left of our marriage to salvage, and that if she wanted to reach me, she should call my lawyer. She cried, begged, apologized, and then when I started packing a suitcase, she shifted to gaslighting me, saying I was throwing away everything we had over a mistake. And the worst part of what she said was I had no one else in the world. Why would I leave the only family I had left? This stung, because I told her she was my only remaining family after my parents died and there was no one else I could depend on, only for her to throw those very words back in my face. I left that night to a hotel where I am staying until I find a new apartment. Yesterday, I officially filed for divorce. Edit. My responses to some of the comments. I didn't tell her that I knew about the affair after she said she kissed some random guy at the bar. She ended up finding out from her. The OBS confronted him and called her up as well and gave her shit. The OBS was really upset when I told her and couldn't keep it in. I don't blame her. He really did her dirty. Her mom is sick, and she has been going out of town a lot to be with her. And instead of supporting her, he had been using that time to get with my wife. I didn't because I was blindsided by her telling me she kissed a random guy at the bar. It may sound insignificant compared to the double life she has been leading with my friend, but in that moment, I think I started realizing how badly she wanted to cheat on me, and it came as a shock. I was too angry to say anything to her without blowing up in her face, so I just left. It's hard to explain why. It just made more sense to leave than to try and find out why she'd been sleeping with my friend after I heard that from her. When I left the house, she kept calling me that night and leaving me messages. When the OBS called her the next day and confronted her husband, she stopped trying to reach me. It's been crickets from her since. And him too. I put 2 and 2 together because around the time OBS messaged to tell me she confronted him and called her, I stopped getting calls from my wife. OP is certainly not an AH. How can he be in this situation? What OP did is 100% justified. He acted responsibly and showed mature behavior. Not OP, but OP's wife and his so-called friend are AHs for their betrayal. So, I would rate each of them 4 out of 5 on the AH scale. As OP's actions are reasonable and hence justified, I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Equalad2434 AITA. For telling my sister she's the reason her kids don't want to come around. I am a 48-year-old mother of 4 kids. I have a daughter, Kaylee, who is about to graduate high school, 2 sons in college, and my oldest son, Jerry, who has been living with me since he graduated college a year ago. My sister, Sarah, is 50 years old and has 3 kids, a daughter in high school, a son in college, and a son who's getting his master's degree. Sarah told her kids that as soon as they graduate high school, they must pay rent in college if they want to keep their rooms. I told her she shouldn't do that because it would drive them away. She told me that this is the way she wants to parent, and I should respect that. Yesterday, Sarah, my youngest sister Jen, and I went shopping to catch up and hang out. While at the store, I grabbed 4 baskets to make Halloween baskets for my kids. I gave them each a mug, a blanket, candy, and a gift card. Sarah asked why I was getting that. I told her I had seen on social media that people make these baskets and I wanted to make some for my kids. Jen also got the things to make some for her kids. Sarah said that was completely unnecessary and we should stop babying our kids. I just told her I like doing nice things for my kids. You could tell that kind of made her mad, but we continued to shop. Later, Sarah came over for dinner. Jerry is a good cook, so not only does he do most of the cooking, he also pays for all the groceries. While we were sitting in the living room, my sister said, "When is he going to move out?" I told her, "Whenever he's ready." She said he should at least be paying bills. I said no. My goal as a mother is to ensure my child succeeds in life. He's been saving up money to buy a house, and I refuse to accept rent because that means it would take him longer to reach his goal. I explained that I don't even want him to pay for groceries, but I physically can't stop him from doing that. She scoffed, but just ignored it. But what set me off is when both Jerry and Kaylee were passing through the living room, I told them to hurry up and write their Christmas list, because I know some early sales are about to start. Sarah said that I'm ridiculous, and I'm not being a good parent, because I refuse to unleash my children. She said they are too grown for Christmas lists. She said I'm raising lousy and lazy kids. Jerry told her to cool out, but I chimed in. I told her I'm a way better parent than her. I told her my kids are far from lazy. I had a son graduate salutatorian. My daughter is in the top 10% of her class. My oldest son has a fantastic job. I told her to ask herself why her children barely come to see her. It's because they hate her. I asked her what good mom expects their kids to pay rent and go to school. I told her she was the definition of a shitty parent, and she shouldn't have had kids if she was going to treat them like crap once they turned 18. She just hurried and left the house. Later that night, Sarah shared her side in the group chat that includes all my siblings and my mom. Jen told Sarah she was in the wrong and that I have nothing to apologize for. My mom told Sarah that it was unfair to comment on someone's parenting style when she hates when the same is done to her. Sarah just left the group chat. I feel bad about what I said and think I should apologize for being too harsh. AITA? OP is not an AH for defending her supportive parenting style, and Sarah unreasonably criticized it. Sarah's selfish parenting approach has strained her relationship with her own children, and she wants the same for OP, which is completely unjustifiable. So, Sarah is an AH, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. Let's now move on to the next story from Boring-Committee-959. AITA for wanting to give up my son after discovering he isn't mine? I, 32M, am shattered and don't know where to turn. My wife passed away last month, only 7 months after giving birth to our son. She developed peripartum cardiomyopathy, a rare and severe form of heart failure that can occur in the months following childbirth. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she didn't survive. Losing her so suddenly has left me heartbroken and in a state of constant grief. 3 weeks ago, my wife's best friend came over to visit. She was visibly nervous and eventually told me she had something sensitive to share. After some hesitation, she revealed that my wife had confided in her that she'd been unfaithful around the time our son was conceived and that there was a chance he might not be mine. I was stunned and angry. My wife's best friend was telling me this only a week after my wife's death, and it felt like an attempt to tarnish her memory. I couldn't believe it. I told her to leave and not to come back, convinced she was lying or trying to shift blame onto me somehow. The whole thing felt like a betrayal, and I tried to push the thought out of my mind. But once the idea was planted, it wouldn't go away. I kept wondering, what if she was telling the truth? After days of tormenting myself with this possibility, I decided to get a DNA test. It wasn't an easy decision. I felt guilty for even considering it, but I needed closure. Yesterday, the results came back. My worst fears were confirmed. My son isn't biologically mine. Now, I'm in turmoil. I loved my wife, and I wanted to believe our son was a piece of her and me together. But knowing he's not biologically mine has left me feeling lost and betrayed. I keep looking at him, trying to feel the same bond, but the pain of my wife's infidelity is so fresh, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to move past it. I feel awful even considering it, but I don't know if I can raise him on my own. The betrayal I feel is overwhelming, and I don't know if I'm capable of giving him the love and care he deserves. It's breaking my heart and I feel like a failure, but I also feel like I'm not equipped to give him the life he deserves. AITA? Edit. I hadn't thought of contacting the friend, but I will now. The replies have really solidified what I have been feeling. The child is innocent, but I don't think I'd be able to love or care for him as well as I should. Informing the family will be my first step, then contacting the AP, if possible. Adoption is going to be my last resort. Many of you may believe I'm a monster, but put yourself in my situation. I hope you all understand. Edit 2. So, I called her friend. I apologized for my behavior, but also asked why she did not inform me as soon as she knew. She said her loyalties laid with her friend more than me. Okay, fine. I asked her about the AP. She said she doesn't know as it was a one-time thing. Apparently, it happened during her work time, whatever that meant, and during daytime as she'd been told. I mean, I'm not fully understanding, but it seems like she f***ed a guy when she was supposed to be working. Many of you are suggesting I go through her phone or other social contacts, but I don't know any passwords. I never doubted her. We weren't controlling of each other, and had and gave plenty of privacy. The next step is informing the family, both mine and hers. I'm adding another thing. I don't hate the baby, and I'm not so deranged I'd throw him out of the house. Whatever happens according to procedure. I'm not going to instantly abandon a kid just because he isn't mine. OP is not an AH for being shocked and grieving. It is natural because of his wife's infidelity. Despite all this, he is not outrightly abandoning the child. Instead, he is weighing all options. OP isn't the AH. He's grieving his wife's death and dealing with the shock of her infidelity, which has left him feeling betrayed and lost. Though he's considering all options, including adoption, he's doing so with the child's well-being in mind, acknowledging his emotional limitations rather than abandoning responsibility impulsively. His reaction is understandable, under immense stress. Nix, 4964. AITA. For letting my sister have her way and be right? My sister Lucy, 39. Me, Victoria, 30. And my brother Jay, 37. Our brother Jay had a stroke and now has severe brain damage. He can't walk, talk, or do anything on his own. His time in the hospital was extremely tumultuous and stressful. My family members don't work well in crisis. It's very disappointing because, instead of pulling together, they are more interested in controlling the situation or being right at all costs. My sister Lucy is the worst of them all. Extremely volatile, and would sacrifice anything for the sake of being right. At all costs, whatever it takes. She doesn't care who she hurts or f***s over. She has tried to ruin my life reputation multiple times, even attempting to get me fired simply because she couldn't control me or make submit to her. And when that didn't work, she simply tried to control how others perceived me by spreading rumors. She has BPD, but refuses to get medicated or admit she's even been diagnosed. Most of the family avoids her at all costs. Since she's not mentally balanced, I handled essentially all of the decisions for our brother's medical care within the first 2 months. I found him the best stroke doctors, neurologists, surgeons, etc. So we could figure out what his chances of having a good quality of life were. Me and my family agreed that if it wasn't likely he would ever walk or talk again, that we would opt for hospice. This is a key point, since we can't ever agree on anything. Once I finally managed to get both the stroke doctor and neurologist to sit down with us and go over his scans, they essentially said his quality of life would be terrible. Not worth living for, basically. I specifically requested that they were frank and candid in their wording because my family members tend to be highly delusional and twist things when they don't want to accept the truth. My father and I agreed to start looking at hospice facilities. My sister freaked out and fought us viciously. It's worth noting that people with BPD are highly manipulative. Naturally, my father was hesitant to let my brother go. Jay was always his favorite. So, it goes without saying that Lucy successfully manipulated him into believing that letting our brother live would be best for him, and that he could learn to walk and talk again one day, despite the doctors saying otherwise. I begged them to allow me to get second opinions from different doctors before making this decision. I begged them to see reason, to think of our brother, who above all values his autonomy more than anything, and would absolutely resent being a prisoner in his own body for the rest of his life. I begged them to think of who will care for him. How would we afford it? They didn't want to hear it, and they didn't want to think ahead. All they saw was me, the obstacle. And since I was opposing them, they turned on me and cut me out of the decision-making, even telling doctors and nurses to no longer speak to me or give me updates. I was also fired during this time, unbeknownst to me. My boss told me to take all the time I needed, and when I tried to come back after 2 weeks off, I was never put back on the schedule. I also needed to pack up my house and move, so since I had 2 weeks to find a new place and pack up my house, I decided to step back and focus on that. My sister proceeded to make the hospital staff's lives a living nightmare, telling everyone how to do their jobs, reporting them to their supervisors for every little thing, etc. She decides at this point that he's better off at home with her because she believes she will be a better caretaker. So she secured state housing and brought him home. I made it clear I couldn't help her care for him when she made this decision. She insisted that she didn't need our help since we wanted to let our brother die, kill him * anyway, so she didn't trust us to help. Well, now, after stabbing me in my back, f***ing me over and talking shit about me for over a year, she's suddenly begging me to help. She hasn't even had him home for 3 months. She's attempting to guilt, manipulate, and even gaslight me into believing this was my idea. Therefore, I have to take some responsibility and help. Everything I warned her about the realities of caretaking has come true, and she is deeply depressed, angry, and feels I owe it to her to do more. But I don't feel this way. I was never close with my brother. If anything, it was quite the opposite, and she knows this. My sister clawed her way through everyone, limiting her options because she thought she knew best. So now I'm letting her lay in the bed she made for herself. Honestly, I don't even feel a little bad. She's an insufferable I'm sure you're wondering why I wouldn't want to help more. You see, Jay molested me when I was a child. So, stepping up to fight for his life in the hospital day in and day out, while also arguing with my family, coordinating with doctors, nurses, surgeons, etc., was extremely hard and exhausting for me given our history. But I did it anyway, because he didn't have a voice. My sisters know this but doesn't give a shit and thinks I'm being dramatic about it. She had told me to get over it multiple times, and maybe I could if I had ever gotten justice. TLDR, my psycho sister manipulated my father out of putting our brother in hospice after he suffered a stroke, leading to permanent brain damage that put him in a coma for nearly 6 months. Even though hospice was the decision we agreed on as a family, once doctors informed us he would likely never walk, talk, or eat on his own again. He was in a coma for nearly 6 months before waking up. She turned my father against me, and they made this decision for my brother against his wishes. She constantly accosted the hospital staff and questioned their ability to care for him, ultimately deciding to bring him home to care for. I warned her about the realities of caretaking, but she refused to listen. Reality set in after he was home for a month, and she's been trying to manipulate and gaslight me into helping by claiming that the choice to keep him alive was my decision, even though they cut me out of the decision-making for his healthcare over a year ago. They shunned me viciously and were spreading rumors among our family. I'm used to the mistreatment I receive from my family. They're very toxic, manipulative, and controlling. They constantly try to minimize their toxic behavior and fully expect me to get over it. It strained our relationship greatly because I was already NC with them long before my brother's accident and have since resumed NC. It's not possible to coexist with people with such little self-awareness. I can't and won't help care for him. I have a job and a full life dealing with my own autoimmune disease. I was also molested by my brother as a child, so I don't want to help my sister care for him. She and my father think I need to get over it. I think they're insensitive comments. OP is not an AH. Rather, her sister Lucy is an AH for displaying volatile behavior. OP took on the responsibility of caring for her brother and advocated for following medical advice. However, it was her sister's toxic behavior that prompted OP to step back. Therefore, you cannot label OP as an AH for prioritizing her own well-being. All of her actions are completely justified here. So, she is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP's sister is an AH, and I would rate her 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from Society Tiny, 784. AITA for telling my sister she's not allowed to bring her homemade food to Thanksgiving because her cooking is ruining the meal? Every year, our family does a big Thanksgiving dinner, and we all typically bring a dish or two. My sister, who's a lovely person in every other way, insists on cooking something homemade every time. The issue? She's not a great cook. And I don't mean just not great. I mean she has somehow managed to turn classic dishes into borderline inedible creations. For context, last Thanksgiving, she showed up with her special recipe stuffing that was over-seasoned with random spices like cinnamon and cardamom. It was dry, and the flavors were confusing and totally off for stuffing. Only one person took a small bite, and the rest went untouched. Another year, she brought a green bean casserole that had some kind of strange, chewy texture. She later admitted she used coconut milk and almond flour to experiment. No one wanted seconds of that either. This year, I'm hosting Thanksgiving. Since I'm responsible for putting it all together, I wanted to keep the menu consistent so that people could actually enjoy a cohesive meal. I thought I'd avoid drama by asking her to bring non-food items instead, like wine, soda, or even some flowers. I explained to her, very kindly I thought, that I just wanted to make things easy and streamlined, and I'd handle the main dishes. But she didn't take it well. She got offended and told me I was being controlling and shutting her out of the family gathering. She then accused me of making her feel inadequate and said that Thanksgiving is about everyone contributing, not me deciding what's acceptable. I told her that everyone appreciates her effort, but that she could contribute in other ways and still be part of it. She doubled down and said she's bringing her famous green bean casserole whether I like it or not. Now, my mom and a couple of other family members have chimed in, saying I should just let her bring whatever she wants because it's Thanksgiving, and it's the thought that counts. They're acting like I'm committing some huge offense by wanting the food to be enjoyable for everyone and not have random experimental dishes that no one will eat. But I feel like I'm just trying to keep the meal enjoyable and, frankly, edible. I don't think it's wrong to want guests to actually enjoy the food, especially since I'm putting in a lot of effort to host. Am I really being unreasonable here? AITA? Update. Alright, well, things have escalated fast. Thanks to everyone who offered advice. I tried to compromise, but it's already turning into a whole thing. And Thanksgiving is still a few weeks away. After our last conversation, my sister was being pretty cagey about what she planned to make, so I reached out to my mom, hoping she could help smooth things over. Instead, she got defensive, saying I'm overthinking, and that it's just one dish. I told her I wasn't sure it was just one dish anymore, especially after hearing about my sister's grocery haul, including canned oysters and edible glitter. Then my mom let slip that my sister has been hard at work on some creative menu she's planning as her Thanksgiving surprise. Apparently, she's been telling the family group chat, which I wasn't included in by the way, that I'm being controlling, and that she wants to expand everyone's palate with something truly unique. To top it off, my cousin sent me a screenshot from the group chat where my sister said she's bringing not one, but 3 dishes to Thanksgiving now. She's calling them her Thanksgiving trio experience, complete with their own place settings and little menu cards she's designing. I'm officially panicking because I have no idea what she's planning to serve, and from what I've heard, it's not remotely traditional. At this point, half the family thinks I'm overreacting, while the other half is texting me with things like, is she really bringing glittered sweet potatoes? I feel stuck. If I try to control it anymore, I'm the bad guy, but if I don't, Thanksgiving might turn into a tasting event for my sister's avant-garde cooking. So yeah, Thanksgiving is weeks away, and it's already become a family spectacle. I don't know whether to brace myself or just preemptively order pizza. OP is not an AH for trying to maintain the standard of the Thanksgiving meal. It is clear that OP's sister is not a good cook. So her insistence on contributing her homemade meal to the Thanksgiving meal is not justifiable. She is being unreasonable and is a bit of an AH. So I would rate her 0.5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on the next story from Strange Temperature 00. My sister-in-law licked my face, and now my brother is not talking to me. I am 22M, and my brother is 28M. He's been engaged to his fiancée for a few months now. She is 24. My brother's fiancée is your typical spoiled party girl, and TBH, so is my brother. In the last year or so, my brother and I have had a strained relationship. This is mostly due to differences of opinion when helping take care of our mom, who is struggling with some PTSD anxiety. She got held hostage by a man at her job, is still recovering, and not back to work yet. For some context, my brother is a very impatient and opinionated person who struggles to see things outside his own perspective. He doesn't have a good grasp on mental health. He is easily persuaded by what he reads online, gets caught up in conspiracy theories, and I noticed COVID, the pandemic, kind of exacerbated all of this. I work as a paramedic, and he's been arguing with me about thinking I know better than him ever since. I am adopted, and my bio mom was of a different ethnicity, so we don't look like brothers. When he can't think of a way to win an argument, he brings up the fact that I'm not her real son or his real brother. It wasn't always like this between us, which is sad. He's just not the same person, and I'm not sure if it's work stress, life stress, or what. I get that this post is going to be skewed by my perspective, but I'll try to be objective when it comes to the conflict. My birthday was last weekend when this happened. My brother's fiancé apparently had the idea to throw me a surprise party. Most of the people there were friends of my brother and the fiancé. Everyone was drunk. They made a bit of a show of bringing me out a cake and having me blowing out the candles. Before I did that, my brother's fiancé swiped frosting on her finger and put it on my cheek. I thought it was just her being nice and not trying to smash a piece of cake in my face. I blew out the candles, and after I did that, his fiancé grabbed my face and licked it, like from my jaw all the way up the side of my face. I have no idea why she did this. We don't even have the kind of relationship where it would be funny. My brother's face changed, his demeanor changed. He became very withdrawn and irritable. They were seen quietly fighting, and he ended up just leaving the party. I brought it up the next day to make sure he was okay, and apparently the two of them made up. It's me he has an issue with. I don't know what she told him, but it seems as if I'm the one being made out to be flirting with her, wanting her, etc. Not even remotely true. I told him to leave me out of his relationship problems. It's his partner who disrespected him and embarrassed him. He's angry at the wrong person. I refuse to apologize. Apparently, I am going to be out of the wedding unless I do. He's upset because I won't admit to my mistake. Well, I don't feel like I made one. Should I just do it for the sake of settling it? Normally, I'm willing to be the bigger person, but this is a false accusation I don't want attached to myself. AITA? Update. After trying to reach out to my brother, he finally came around and stopped ignoring me. He didn't want to talk about what happened, but was willing to put it behind us. TBH. I think talking about it would have been healthier, but I decided to let it go because he was so adamant. Then just the other day, he came to me on his own and admit that he feels unsure about his relationship and is struggling to trust his fiancée ever since the incident on my birthday. I told him there's no rush to get married, and he should take time to figure out what he's feeling. I didn't try to give any particular opinion, because I feel like this is something he needs to figure out for himself. Also, I genuinely don't know what's going on between them. He still took what I said the wrong way somehow, and we ended up having an argument. He thinks I'm not happy for him, and don't want to see him successful starting a family. I tried to walk away at this point in the conversation, because no matter what I said it was just going to get misconstrued, but he didn't want to stop fighting. Somewhere in that, I finally learned why he's so mad at me these days. It turns out he's pissed that our mom paid for my tuition. I've been doing OT to pay her back. Clarification. If it matters, she doesn't actually want me to pay her back. It was a gift, but I'd like to pay her back slowly. My brother feels this money should have been given to him for his wedding, which I am no longer invited to. I don't really know how to fix things, but that's where we're at. OP is not an AH because he didn't ask his brother's fiancée to lick his face. OP's brother is being unreasonable by asking him for an apology. Instead, he should ask his fiancée for an explanation of her actions. OP's brother is an AH, and I would rate him 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP is clear, and I would rate him 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Almond Dolmans. AITA. For how I responded to my stepfather, I'm an 18-year-old trans girl, and I'm in a bit of a rough spot when it comes to my stepfather. To keep a long story short, physical and emotional abuse were all part of me and my siblings' lives. For me, it was the worst from the ages of about 8, 12. I still grapple with the emotions and trauma that resulted from that time. To give an example of this, I remember a night where me, my mom, and both my brothers had to walk out in the rain because we were drunkenly kicked out by my stepdad. There were multiple other incidents, as me and my family began calling them, where he would lose his temper and do something incredibly abusive and violent, followed by donuts and fun day the next day to make up for it. It has gotten considerably better since that time, but he's still not a good person. The incidents are much more infrequent, but they still happen. Fast forward to now, like I said, I'm 18, and I finally moved out with my partner, which in itself has been a bit of an issue. I'll spare the details and get to the issue of this post. Just wanted to give some context to my situation. So I get a call from my stepdad, and he asks about some stuff that I hadn't picked up from his house yet. I didn't want to talk to him longer than I needed, so I was just agreeing to everything he was saying. I'll paraphrase because I was very stressed and don't quite remember exactly what he said, but here's the gist. He asks me this: why does it seem like we have a problem? Do we? Tell me, son. Be a man. I really didn't want to have this conversation because at this point, I was at the verge of crying because he had previously physically assaulted my brother for saying something about how he treats us in the past, and I was scared he would come to my apartment and do something similar. I said, I really don't want to have this conversation right now. I'm sorry. Then hung up. After this, he calls me 2 more times. This is the text conversation afterwards. Stepdad, you want to hang up on me and disrespect me. You're no longer welcome here ever till we fix this. Give me my house key on Friday. Me, I am uncomfortable with how fast you go from 0 to 100 like this. I didn't want to talk about that on the phone. I just want you to respect my choices the way I'm trying to respect yours. Stepdad, hanging up was bullshit. I never raised my voice one time. You don't love me? Fine. You're the only one who has ever treated me the way you have. None of my children have done this. I want my house key on Friday. Turn your back on me and I'll do the same. Me. That isn't what I meant at all. I'm sorry. Could we talk about this when things have calmed down? All I did was hang up the phone because I didn't feel comfortable. Stepdad, you could have just said that. I would have hung up. Me. Being put on the spot like that made me freeze up. I'm sorry. After this, I heard very little from him until yesterday. My mom called me and asked how I was. We had a bit of small talk. Then she asked me to text him back because he had texted me that he loves me and he wants to talk things out. I said I would, and I sent him this. This is where I might be the butthole. Hey, just texting you to let you know that I don't hate you. I just need space at the moment. You can't ban me from the house and then turn around and wonder why I haven't texted. I love you doesn't mean you're sorry. That's not how this works. I just need space. Tell everyone at home I love them. I heard nothing back for the rest of the day. I then got this from my mom this morning. I love you, sweetheart. We need to talk about your text to dad. All he said was he loved you, and you jumped in saying it wasn't good enough because it wasn't a sorry. I know dad can shoot first and ask questions later, which is not cool, and it sucks being on the receiving end of it. However, he loves the out of you and would do anything for you. It hurt me to read that text you sent him. If you wanted to hurt him, you succeeded. He won't be texting or calling you unless you want him to. So, the ball is in your court, and if and when you want to talk again, things need to be resolved by the concert. There's a concert coming up where the whole family will be going. Dad and I won't be going, or you won't be going if you two aren't talking by then, because I'm not going to be around you two not talking. This is all coming from me and not him, just so that's clear. He has no clue I'm even texting you. I love the out of you, dead name. Take your break away from dad, but don't lead him on thinking you're going to reach back out to him if you're really planning not to. Oh, and dropping your key off at your work with administration. You could have at least given it to your brother. I love you. Let me know your thoughts. This text has made me reconsider everything so far. I feel horrible. Was I the I never asked for an apology, and I realized it sounded like I was demanding one. I don't know, this could be the abused brain talking, but I feel like I overreacted massively with my response. I didn't mean to hurt him. What do you all think? OP is not the AH because her response was a reasonable reaction to her stepfather's abusive history and his attempt to manipulate her feelings. You cannot call OP an AH for setting her boundaries. She has every right to do so. Here, OP's stepfather is being an AH, and I would rate him 2 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the last story for this video. The story is from Macaroni Salad King. AITA for leaving my 26M girlfriend alone at a party when she 25F fell asleep. Hey all, my currently ex-girlfriend, and I haven't been able to see eye to eye on something that happened this past weekend, and I need some outside opinions on what I'm the asshole for. There are at least some parts I know I am. On Saturday, some of my friends from high school were having a Halloween party that me and girlfriend were invited to. These HS friends and I kept in touch, hanging out through college, and one of the couples got married earlier this year with a joint wedding party weekend that both girlfriend and I attended. I was in the wedding, but it was more open as it was a combined bachelorette party anyway, so some SOs were invited as well. I explained that to show this is not the first time for girlfriend being around these friends. In addition to that, we have hung out casually with them a few times and went on a lake weekend with them. On to the party. Everything was going well all night. We chatted and played games in the closed garage. It was a little chilly out, but being a closed garage, it wasn't too bad. Many were out there without a coat on, and fine all night. The hostess's boyfriend also invited some of his friends, whom no one else knew. They were fine, albeit a little quiet and to themselves. But hey, it was a party where they didn't know the majority of people. We tried including them and making them feel welcome, and all was well. After a good amount of time, the last game finished, and the unknown half of people ended up leaving. The rest of us ended up just inside the garage door chatting about past people, memories from HS, just shooting the shit as the night wound down. When we got inside, I realized girlfriend had not followed, so I went back to the garage, right around the corner through the door, maybe 20 feet away, and saw girlfriend had fallen asleep in a chair out in the garage looking peaceful. No biggie in my mind. I figured it wasn't too cold in the garage, and we were just wrapping up the party and chatting, so I let her continue sleeping, assuming we would be leaving fairly soon anyway. Girlfriend then texted me, "How long was I asleep in the garage?" I'm trying really hard not to be upset that I was just left. I am freezing. I replied, 30 minutes? It was intentional. Only the core group was left. We figured you passed from a few drinks and were all just chatting. Not leaving you out. Just clearly the end of the party and wrapping up. Where are you? Girlfriend. Yeah, so maybe don't leave your girlfriend in a garage. Me. And how would I know you want to be woken up? Maybe don't fall asleep at a party? I don't think it's fair to put that on me. We can talk about it tomorrow. Drunk and tired isn't the time. Girlfriend. I want to break up. I found her in the living room like she said, where she had ordered an Uber back to our town, 1 hour away. We were staying close by with my parents. Now, I realize I was harsh in my text. There had been a lot of drinking, and I had gotten frustrated, as I felt like I was getting blame I didn't deserve. That is what I believe in the for. Girlfriend is very upset, and feels me leaving her in the garage in that situation shows a complete lack of caring and disrespect for her. That she woke up confused on where she was, and freezing and can't believe that I didn't wake her up to come inside. I agree I could have been more considerate and realized it might be too chilly in the garage, but in my head, this is a minor overlook, and the reaction should have been waking up and going, "Oh, I'm a bit chilly. I should move inside," not make it my responsibility to know how her body feels and adjust for her. She now regrets breaking up with me, saying she didn't really want to take it that far. Hence why I still need advice, as I am taking a couple days to process everything. I don't take someone crossing the line to breaking up as a small thing. And she also called me a psychopath the next day for not understanding her side of things, which directly attacks an insecurity I have confided in her about before. So now I come here to, hopefully, clearly lay out what happened, to hopefully get clarity on if I should have been more attentive here, or if it's not that big of a deal as I see it, to help me decide how I would like to move forward with this relationship. So, AITA? OP is an AH for leaving her girlfriend alone, asleep in the garage. His behavior shows that he is not a responsible person. OP's girlfriend frustration is completely justified. So, I would rate her 0 and OP 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale.